Hello, Hidden Pearls podcast crew. Welcome to another episode. Today we are super excited to be sitting down with Patricia and Michael. They are the founders, the operations, the brains, the heart, and all the things behind SweetBeau American Mustangs. And we had the incredible opportunity to be a part of their very first ever retreat. We did that in partnership with MVP, but they invited us to really be a part of the program. So after that, we did a bunch of interviews on site, which you guys are going to also see. We're going to release those in some different short segments. However, for this time, we really wanted to sit down with them and give everybody a little bit of space on the back end to just integrate and reflect on how magical of an experience it was. And so today we are sitting down to have that interview, and we feel so honored and grateful to not only have been a part of their experience, but also to feel very connected and to call them friends. So this is their story. Thank you so much for being here, and can't wait for y'all to hear it. Three, two, one.
Action!
Jesus Christ.
Indeed. But he's not here today. But we are. So Bruce Kittle with Emma Kittle and Jan Kittle, they're working the camera in the background. So with Hidden Pearls podcast, we are super excited to sit down with Patricia and Michael. I guess it's Griffin-Soffel and
Griffin-Soffel.
Yeah, Soffel. Okay. Oh yeah, I keep putting a T in it.
I know.
I couldn't find you in my contacts because I kept.
You think it's Sofitel like the hotel?
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
How we wish.
So yeah. So anyway, well, welcome, and they've been very gracious and invited us up to their place in Woodside, California, and we are looking over a gorgeous horse ranch, and so we'll get back to that in a little while. So this is a follow-up, and so a week ago or so, we were with you guys down at your place, SweetBeau Mustang Ranch, where people can pick up well-trained
American Mustangs.
Incredibly
American
trained.
Mustangs, yeah. And we're going to come all the way back to that story. But we were with you for about 2.5 days, had a great experience, and Emerging Vets and Players was there with some other veterans. And we did what they call equine facilitated healing and some other things. So we are going to come back to that. But we really wanted to get back with you guys just to tell a little bit more about your story and that ranch, because that weekend was really amazing. And the opportunities that you're creating both for horses and for humans is really a cool story. So that's really what we're back to get a little snippet of that. So we thank you so much for your time and for hosting us here. We really wanted to come see the house a lot.
Yeah, you guys hyped this up. Yeah, it was not a letdown.
Yeah, so it was really good. So I guess where I want to start, like I said, we'll get back to the MVP weekend. But so this whole thing really, when we first got here, we set up on the deck and we kind of walked around and he said, hey, let's walk over to the horse barn. And Patricia, you were over there, and I walked out and there's a big old horse out there, and then they all come running in, and I think you have 4 or 5 on site, right?
Yep.
And we met Guinness. I don't know how many hands, but
18
hands, 1,800 pounds probably, whatever. Yep. It's just this giant of a gorgeous.
Gentle giant.
Yeah, gentle giant. So, but anyway, so this story really, of all the things, it really starts with horses. And that's really what set the whole thing up. And so I guess the metaphor I like to think about is life is a journey for sure, and you guys' journey and story. And so we're going to post your bios that you guys sent, and we'll cover them a little bit more in a formal introduction, before that'll be part of the show. So if people haven't heard of you guys and the work that you've done in your corporate lives, we really encourage them to check some of that stuff out. But as we were talking before, that's a whole separate podcast. In itself. Okay. So today, though, we want to focus on horses and SweetBeau. So tell us, where did the horse thing come from? When did you get started? And why in the world would you be so passionate about these monstrous 4-legged creatures?
That's such a good story, too. First of all, thank you for coming up and taking such an interest in SweetBeau and participating in our first launch of that equine therapy program. It was a huge thing to us, so thank you so much. Yeah. Starting it, that's a pretty good story. We ran a software company for quite some time. We sold the company, and then I found myself with a lot of time on my hands. And I am a horse person. I was born with it. Anybody who's a horse person has the DNA. They know they're born with it. You can never get away from it. So I spent 18 years running a software company, and when I was able to do what my heart told me to do, it was all about horses. So you could see we have 5 that we own here privately. But I was always conscious of the plight of the Mustang, the horse that represents the United States of America, the one that helped us settle the country. We couldn't have done it without it. It's carried us into wars, etc. But I realized that that horse is on its way to extinction. And when I had retired and I'm looking online, I'm hearing stories constantly about the roundups with the helicopters, etc. And then researching further on what happens to those horses. And it's a bit of a myth that they're protected by the federal government. They're actually, if they're not adopted out, once they're rounded up in BLM holding pens, they pretty much end up in a bad place. So my intention was to do something about that. Instead of being angry every time I read an article, I thought, all right, figure out what you're going to do. And we got involved with a rescue of 900 horses. And
Casual start. Just
casual start.
Well, let's just dive right in.
The South Dakota Rescue, is that it?
It was a South Dakota
Just
rescue.
put your toe in the water.
Yeah. It's the ISPMB rescue. It was actually a rescue of a rescue. And Michael's very supportive, although I did shock him. Probably the biggest shock he had of his life was to say, by the way, we're committed to taking 25 stallions from this rescue, and so now we need to hurry up and step on the gas pedal to find a ranch.
Okay. So
there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of want to get Michael's version of this, like as you kind of came into this, because so we committed to 900 horses, and that was, well, Michael, I'll let you tell the story.
Well, there's one piece that I just want to touch on, because I think, our listeners, we have folks from all over, both in corporate and athletic, and, the journey of kind of discovering ourselves and living our truest life, and finding our purpose. Those are all kind of mysterious questions that people struggle with all the time. Typically, our listeners are really curious about that, so that's kind of a topic that we talk about. So when you first opened, you said this, we ran the software company and we did that. And then when I got out of that, I finally decided to follow what my heart wanted me to do. So tell me, how did your heart speak to you? I mean, what was like you don't get a neon light that just flies over the sky and said, "Hey, Patricia, it's time to do a horse ranch." What was it like? How did that interpretation process go? And then maybe I'd really like to hear, because you guys, how did Michael interpret that same kind of heart message?
The call.
Yeah, because it's kind of interesting. That's really what it is a call, and you chose to answer.
Okay, I'll tell you the truth. When I was a kid, I knew I had to do something like this. I just knew. And it wasn't my calling to go into a software company. I designed, I developed, I started the company, but that wasn't my passion. I knew I had to do something like that in order to do something like SweetBeau. And I remember we were selling the company, somebody said, "Oh, I know this is your baby and we're going to take care of it." And I said, "No, this is a financial transaction to take me where I need to go." And so we were able to buy a ranch and take those 25 horses. And that was absolutely my calling. And I know it every day. It's actually set me on the path to the best time of my life.
Okay. That's great. Okay. So it was really clear for her. I'm tempted to tell the call story for Jan and I, but that's a whole nother thing. So anyway, because she said, "You may have gotten a call. I haven't heard anything." But anyway, that's another story. So Michael, what was the call like for you on your end, and how's this horse journey been, and when did you get pulled in?
So the journey started on our very first date. And our very first date was a horseback ride. And I'd never been on a horse before. She was, born and raised around horses all her life. So 2.5, 3 hours later, I, in a saddle, I kind of learned real quick, yes, I'm, starting to really enjoy this person, because, again, it was our first date, and it was kind of like I was brave enough to say, yeah, I can do that. She used the word cocky. I use brave.
That's a whole nother podcast. But.
There you go.
So
Spousal reframe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, and as we continued dating, we continued, with the horse journey. And then we got into every year we'd go away somewhere. We always had some sort of horse riding trip in there, whether it be, going in the United States or going somewhere else. We'd always factor in a horse riding trip. So as we had the software company and as we're, needing some time to decompress, again, horses were there. Horses were always around. She was, born with that gene that was in her that always had to do about horses. And then if I want to fast forward to the SweetBeau piece and how we got to there, I know, she had done endurance riding. She had, we've got 5 horses here at the house, in Woodside. Her joy and her passion is spending those days in the saddle, out riding, coming home from work, jumping on the saddle and riding up in these hills around here. And you could see that. When we started thinking about selling the company, it was like, what's going to be our purpose? What's going to be our goal? Well, we want to give back. How are we going to give back? We thought before we got into the training piece of the Mustang, we thought we would just own some sort of a rescue. And then we started visiting rescues, and we started looking and saying, well, this is a pretty finite situation because land can only support so many animals, so many horses. So we'd gone to a couple of rescues. When we saw them, we saw how they were being run. We took our business acumen and said, okay, I would do this different. And the two of us are looking at it saying, how can we solve this rescue's problem? Because we saw so many just little glimpses and little holes in the wall of the problem. We're thinking, we'll just bring our Silicon Valley expertise to it. So when we started thinking about the rescue, we started thinking, well, if I do a rescue and we rescue 50 horses, that's it. There's thousands that are in holding pens, but we can only rescue 50. So let's start thinking of how do we pivot on this? Well, let's pivot and say, instead of just a rescue, let's be a training center. Therefore, we're not only taking a horse out of a holding pen, we're then training them to be a domestic horse as best we can, and then putting them out and letting the Mustang have a domestic life. Therefore, we can continue that cycle, and instead of a finite number of horses rescue, we can hopefully get 20 or 30 every single year coming out of our program, which is rescuing more horses. So we got involved in the 900 out of South Dakota, as she mentioned to you.
Right.
Yes, she shocked the crap out of me when she said we're taking 25. And of course, we had no ranch.
Wait, what was the gap between the 900 to the 25? Because the 900 was a donation, and the 900, you weren't with them. They weren't yours.
Well, the 900 wasn't just a donation. We got involved.
Okay.
I got actually involved. And we had to take the woman to court to get the titles to the horses because they were already on their way to the kill buyers.
Okay.
Not physically on their way, but they'd been promised to them by the counties that had to take them over. So knowing that they were going, myself and a couple of other people decided to get them in court. We said no horse left behind. We found someone to spend a year of her life, once we did get them legally, to adopt them out. So during the process, as everybody's getting adopted out, it was pressure on me saying, okay, put your money where your mouth is, and what are you going to do? And I said, well,
I'll take 25.
Let's get a big number there. So
there was no consultation on that, by the way.
But you're so...
Hey, honey,
They were
I'm thinking about...
by the way, we have 25 stallions coming.
And you didn't have a ranch?
No.
No, but we had one within a couple months because doors open for you like that.
Well, and I think, so one of the things that, like, when we were talking at the ranch, you were talking about manifestation and how you've always had such a clear vision for your life and these big projects. Can you talk a little bit about manifestation and maybe how the vision, how it started as a vision and how it really transpired and manifested into what it is now?
Manifestation's kind of a crazy thing. I mean, it's not something you really think about until you're, at least me. I'm older. The nice part of being older is you know where you're going to end up. And I look back at my life and say, I knew I was going to do this. And once I made the decision, I stopped rethinking the decision. And then I just backed into it with my actions. And I have been very successful and fortunate to have achieved basically most of the things I've ever wanted in life. And interestingly enough, those things are not material, even though you can look at the ranch and say, wow, it's a big deal, but they're not. And I think what is really amazing to me is the impact you can have with a ripple effect. We just adopted out one horse that was really having a difficult time. The horse was scared of everything. He had been traumatized. He was a little older. He was a stallion until he was 7. So we had him extra long. We had a couple trainers that didn't treat him well. And this woman came a couple times to look at him. His name is Atlas. And she finally adopted that horse. And the messages I get from her about how in love she is, how he's already changed her life, how, it's just fills you up. It completely fills you up, which is why we did the weekend, helping other people and seeing that once they get through their trauma, they become the inspiration. And that's what Atlas, the horse, did. He became an inspiration. Yeah. And that, to me, is manifesting what we want to create, that ripple effect in life.
Okay, so, and I just want to Michael, I'd really like to pull you in on this. So one of the things, particularly with our athletes that we work on, but this is kind of is this notion about mindset. When I get up every day, what am I doing to move toward my goals, fulfill my purpose, the small steps each day that you kind of take. And so, at least with athletes, we talk about manifestation, visualization, clear goal setting, creating action steps, thinking about a clear process on how to get there. We'll do affirmations and then do other kind of mind work around negative self-talk, those kind of things. So in that whole kind of compilation of, tactics, I guess, whether it's corporate or in the horse world, did you guys participate in that kind of stuff? I mean, as far as mindfulness, meditation, breath work, any of those kind of things, I'm just thinking, because you're very successful in the corporate world, you guys, the things that you accomplished and selling the business and everything. So between that and now, how do you structure your day in a way? Where does this mindset come from to have the power to manifest? Because, part of it is we kind of have this notion that the world and life rises up to meet the energy you project in a way, and so that vision really is really important, that you can see where you're going and you kind of create it by, I believe in it, I'm working toward it and doing all that kind of stuff. But how do any of those notions fit into the two of your lives?
And I think, so something on that though is because exactly what you guys are saying is once you start to live in alignment, things just open up, but there's a whole process to get in alignment and the daily practices and the mindset, so as you're creating all of this stuff, how do you take the vision and the mindset from, the success of corporate world and then turn it into the success of this operation?
So I would say that, 18 years that we had
animals, sorry. Man. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, Patricia's small cougar is
coming over to say hi.
So I would say for us, there wasn't a manifestation and wasn't a transition. I'd say we went from the corporate world where your foot is on the gas full time, and our mindset every day in the corporate world as we were expanding was all about what's next. We're problem solvers. We've always been problem solvers. So when we sold the company and we started looking at SweetBeau, or I shouldn't say looking at it, but getting the idea, the foot didn't come off the gas. The foot, we were still focused on what's our purpose, what's next. She had already been involved with that South Dakota rescue. So we started thinking about that. How could we do that? How could we do something similar? We'll get into it in a little while, but the whole, peaceful warriors, peaceful horses, how that happened as well. But the mindset went from, we were so successful in a software company, what can we cross over and take those same nuggets that we learned in the corporate environment and put it into the horse environment? You probably noticed down at the barn, you may or may not, but we got whiteboards all over the place. We run it as a business. It's not a hobby for us.
whiteboards.
We love
And-
whiteboards.
I've got a compilation of different sizes, ranging from small
Everywhere.
to like giant.
I got them all over.
We're
Like it was a very big thing for us to not bring one on this trip, or we're like literally doesn't fit.
No, it is. And, and her strength, expertise, and her guidance is all about vision and creative, right? My area of expertise is all about operation and efficiencies. So the two of us together have a very good, unique business acumen on how she's got, what I want to do, and I bring the how, into that and how we get there. So when we started this, it wasn't I think we're going to do this and start kicking and, start thinking about it and whatever. It went full bore right into it, from an administrative side of it to implementation side of it to production side of it, all the way through to where we are today. And we don't take our foot off the gas. Sometimes I'd like to take the foot off the gas, pump the brake once or twice, but generally we don't.
I'm just I'll push this out, and then please, I know you're going to say something, but like, I think our experience too with people in our own lives is that sometimes, like when you said yes to the 25, right? Mm-hmm. Now you've kicked into motion the reality of something happening. And as frightening as that can be for people, like making a commitment, stepping off the ledge, whatever you want to call it, it just always feels like when you do that and you take that risk and you follow that passion and dreams, like then the universe conspires, like you said, open doors, pathways clear, people show up in your lives that you had no idea of, and all of a sudden what seems so complicated and really difficult and almost impossible, things just start to fall into place. Not that it's not a lot of work and there's all these details to deal with, but still, when you commit energy, love, and passion, all of a sudden things kind of fall into place for us. So anyway, I know, and you're going to respond to something Michael said, so I don't want to cut that off in any way, so please go ahead.
No, I was going to say that one of the things that I do, and I don't think I've ever even verbalized to anybody before, like I'll be over in the gym and I'll be stretching and I'll do, my workout. And then I just make everything silent, and I just usually drop to my knees with gratitude. And I just want to experience gratitude. And I open it up and say, send me where I'm supposed to go. I'm very spiritual, deeply spiritual. And I do believe that this universe is guiding me. And maybe everybody, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if everybody has the same guidance or passion that I do, but I know that I'm being guided, and I have total faith in that. And I'm not saying that there's a specific religion. I mean, if anything, I would be Buddhist or Native American or something,
Totally Native American.
Yeah, I would be Native American.
Totally there.
And I do have 1% blood of that, so there.
Let's go.
All right.
Authentic of the people.
Authentic.
Go ahead.
So to me, there is power in that. There's a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah, and just trusting, kind of having that internal pulse and that passion, and then feeling like there's this connection, and then creating space to kind of, be part of that, stay centered and grounded, and then just trust that, there is some kind of guidance. Obviously you got to use your own mind and your brain and your heart and your passion and the two hands and all that kind of stuff and go out and do the work. But at the same time, there are things conspiring to help these things happen. So I'm sorry, Michael, go. You were
I was just going to say, just to close the loop on that, we don't relax well. I mean, we go on vacation, we've got to have something to do every day. Right. Going just, I'll just pick something out, going to the BVIs. If we're not scuba diving or sailing or kneel boarding or something, we're not good at just sitting on a boat or sitting on a beach. It doesn't work. Right. We've got to be doing something. We're active. So that's probably, the other piece of, the other part of what keeps us going, what motivates us, what our manifestations is. We're not good at that.
Yeah. So much to experience.
A traditional retirement would have killed us, which is why I knew when I said 25 stallions that it was a good thing for both of us, because we would never have survived a traditional retirement, I don't think.
Okay. Well, let's just, keep honoring your time too, because I know you were fitting us in. So I guess, we want to get the SweetBeau story in. Mm-hmm. And so we take this passion from horses, the success in the corporate world, and then kind of this calling to, at least for these first 25, and you didn't just take care of those first 25. You've set up what now is going to be quite a project as you move forward. So I want to just kind of pin that for a second, though, and then bring up, so when we were out at your place, we had several conversations around healing. And so in the weekend that we were there was this equine facilitated healing with veterans. So I guess, what I want to kind of bring up, and we talked about this notion about healing portals, and I'll just kind of toss something out there, and I don't want to limit you in any way about your understanding of it, but just creating kind of space and, time and rituals or whatever. You'd already scheduled the sound bath when we were out there, which was so unbelievably beautiful. The two beautiful human beings, I think it was Ivan, right? And Victoria.
Ivan and
Veronica. And it was a gorgeous night. The Milky Way was just like talking to us, with the sound. It was unbelievable.
We set that up. You didn't know that?
Well, guys can coordinate the whole thing. So I guess just talk to me about, what in your mind, what is healing? I guess because here's what I was seeing, right? I'm seeing, and we're going to talk about gentling, right, with Roberto and Indy, and the way in which we worked with horses that day, which is a very different than the traditional kind of way people kind of understand it. So you've invested time, energy, love, and passion into creating a location where horses can be healed, because that's really what's happening, and saved, and then placed in loving relationships with humans to serve others. Okay. So you've done that, and then now you're kind of opening the spectrum a little bit from horses to figuring out how can this work with horses on their healing journey, intersect with humans on their healing journey. So what I'm just curious about then is what is this all about healing? And I'm really curious, how have horses and or the other efforts that you've made, how has that impacted your own healing? Because we all have our own journey a little bit on that. So just share with us some of your understandings and concepts about healing and where that's led the two of you.
Well, it doesn't take long in being around a horse to determine that horses will heal you. They bring out an emotion in you, and they bring out you're softer on yourself. You're kinder to yourself because you want to be kind to that horse. And people always say, I rescued a horse. We really don't rescue horses. Horses rescue us. Right. And knowing that, and knowing the power they have, and the kindness and the forgiveness that they have, once you know that, you want to share it with people who need to be healed. And I'm not saying I didn't. I did. I've got a lot of things to be healed over. And my horses have absolutely healed me. And they continue to. And what's interesting is, as we were sitting there when I first met you, I think it was the very first day, you said the word healing portal, and it just struck me like a little mini bolt of lightning. I was like, whoa, that explains it. Because the ranch down there is very spiritual. And I was kind of joking, saying that if we have people here with negative energy, we white sage the place when they leave.
Yeah.
Because we want to keep it pure. We want to keep it the open, free, positive energy that it has. And I think you'll agree it has some really good energy. You said that.
Yeah, very powerful energy.
So it was a lesson for me to more... to have the ability now to articulate that is what it is. SweetBeau is a healing portal. Right. And sharing that with people who are struggling in their life just fills us. It's something that we're meant to do, or the horses are meant to do.
Right. Michael, I don't want to leave. So anything you want to add to that, or?
We have a saying that says horses don't lie. Right. And if you remember, we had that round circle conversation with Susie that day, and Miriam was having a little bit of a kind of a breakthrough.
Yep.
And you probably noticed that Safari walked right over to her as she was having that breakthrough and just comforted her. And you sit down, and that horse could have gone anywhere to anybody, or not even come over. Just could have just hung out in the back of the arena. But it noticed something. It felt something. And as soon as it came over, not only did that horse comfort her, but did you see the change in Miriam at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's that lightning in a bottle that you can't capture.
And so one of the things that we talked a lot about was our auric sphere and how much energy as a human puts off. So as a human, from our heart center, we give about 7 to 5 feet, right? So once you're in that space, you can start to sense people. So, and it's your intuition, it's your sensation, it's our subtle body. But a horse is up to 30 to 35. So they're really about 7 times more than us. And so I remember one of the first times I was ever riding, the person who was helping me was, they like put me on the horse and they were like, your heart's going to start to sync up with the horse because as small as you are, and I was significantly smaller than I am now, but like they were saying their energy sphere just like holds you and you're safe and you start to sync up with them. And so that's so like the horses don't lie, but like you can't lie around that. So horse energy is so, it's like healthy boundaries, and it's how can you create space to exist within your purity or your truth. Or at least that's really heart energy, but that's kind of what I associate horses to and their power.
Well, what's interesting too is that do they sync up with you? They do. And if it's a negative situation, they have their own way of rejecting you. Mm-hmm. And that is to leave your space.
Yeah.
And you saw that in the round pen, that if you're not authentic, being authentic is something that's essential to ever bond or sync up with a horse. Mm-hmm. They know the difference. And if you're not, they just don't trust you, and they never will. And I think that when you take a human that's damaged and struggling and feeling separate from all of their peers, especially military people coming back, it's a whole different world for them, and they're traumatized. Well, when we get these horses, they're traumatized, or they're frightened, or they're angry, or they're shut down. And I think a lot of military people coming back and others with PTSD have the same feelings. And then you put them in a round pen together and you say, work on trusting each other, and magic can happen. Because if someone is not being authentic, the horse is leaving, and that's telling that person, this isn't working for me. And that person has to try harder, but what they're really doing is trying harder on themselves.
So working with the horses, I mean, I know we said this off camera, but I'm going to bring it up. But earlier you were talking about how CEOs don't cry.
I know.
And we don't get emotional. And
That's
here
right.
you had to be the only woman in a boardroom or like running a company for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And so to transition from that to where your heart's kind of just put on blast all the time, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from a horse?
Horses bring out your vulnerability, and I could just shoot you, Emma.
Good question.
We can start with Michael.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the vulnerability is something that I never allowed myself to do. And I told the story as a CEO, I'd have somebody sitting in front of me crying, and I'd say, this doesn't seem to be the right fit for you. Just kind of cold and not very vulnerable or empathetic, except when I was around horses. And then I'm a whole different person. And I wanted that person back. And SweetBeau, I am that person every minute, every day. But I find myself crying all the time. Not all the time, but, telling a great story or talking about something special. Yeah, you saw that. And I'm like, I don't want to cry. But I do, and I hate it. Because I always say leaders don't cry. People don't follow leaders around and sobbing, but it's a good place
maybe in the
me.
medicine world, though.
Yeah.
In the shaman world. In healing portals. Maybe leaders
Healing
do.
portal.
Maybe you need to,
do cry. Yeah. Well,
wait, Michael, what's yours?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine's easy, right? It's patience. I have no patience.
Patience of a gnat.
You've got to have patience with horses. And it's taught me patience. And sometimes it's a forced patience that you're in there and you know mentally you've got to be patient. And sometimes it's hard to harness that because you want to move to the next step so quickly. Move, again, back to our, no relaxation, foot on the gas pedal. But it forces you to stop, think through exactly what the horse is thinking through. Obviously, it's power, it's thought process, it's been traumatized, and all it's asking you is, I want to understand what you're trying to tell me to do. So the patience and the calmness to help them through that. And it's taught me all kinds of patience.
Right, and both of these, there's a lot of different directions, but I'm just thinking it's almost a built-in kind of mindfulness tool in a way, because like if we're really paying attention to the horse and trying to pay attention to ourselves, the horse's response to where we're at, if we're out of alignment, should slow us down.
Yeah.
If we're trying to really connect and help communicate with the horse in a healthy and positive way, and the horse kind of helps us with that as well. So whether it's patience, or sometimes we have to be more assertive, but it's like, and mindfulness is kind of the same thing. It's like paying attention to the messages that you're getting, not getting necessarily pulled into them, but holding space for them, examining them, staying curious, and then finding productive ways to kind of move forward with it. And the horse is just such a powerful tool. We saw it in like all kinds of different ways over that weekend. So
yeah, when you're in there with them, like people are always thinking, when you're in there with the horses, people are always thinking, give them, control them. And you're not controlling them, as Patricia said earlier. You're just giving them a little bit of direction, right? Not correction, direction. And then they're going to respond to whatever they feel that you're directing them towards. So if they're not doing what you're looking for them to do, you got to think internally to yourself, hey, what am I not doing right? What do I need to adjust? How do I change my behavior that it can help this horse get to the next level in behavior? So you've got to have an introspective on yourself on what you're doing and how you can do that better or in a different way to get the same result you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you haven't picked up on this already, horses are healing, an incredible mirror. So let's transition this into peaceful horse, peaceful warrior. Mm-hmm. Is this the name we're going with?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I think so.
Congratulations. TBD. We'll let you guys know. But either way, can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to bring veterans in? And so we talked to Susie, who we've talked a lot about Susie on this show, but works with MVP and also has her own ranch. But she shared with us, when you guys were planning to do this, right? You could have done it with anybody, and you could have charged a lot of money to do it. And instead, for your inaugural opening retreat, you covered everything and invited veterans to come, or members of MVP. So people, so emerging vets and players. And so there were 2 athletes and 2 veterans. So can you tell us why you wanted to go with that community?
Well, I can tell you that when we started SweetBeau, we were talking through it, and I was all about the horses. And we had met a veteran. We'd met someone. And Michael had suggested, he said, maybe we can do something with the veterans. And it just never went away. That thought never went away. So as we were doing this, we even wrote into our mission statement, we will be doing this, but COVID kept us from launching it. But that aspect of it was absolutely Michael's call. And the beauty of that is I was walking away from people at that time. I just shut down an 18-year career saying, I can't even talk to another person. I just want to be in a room with a horse. And he woke me back up to that empathy with people again, and that connection, the reconnection with people, because I was really not connected with that anymore in my life. So he can talk more about the veteran program.
Yeah, great segment intro. So I've always had an affinity for troops. I was never in the service or anything like that. But I remember we were running the company, and I saw this special on TV about a gentleman that was helping combat military personnel that were on a forward operating base in Afghanistan, Iraq. I can't remember where it was. And they were interviewing some of the soldiers, and the soldiers were basically pleading for things that they needed. Basic, socks, toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrushes, gloves, just basic needs that we take for granted every day here. So this gentleman was saying, if anybody's ever interested, here's where I'm located. I'd be happy to, send your stuff off to these troops, etc. So that afternoon, I went down to Costco. 2 of us went down to Costco and just bought all kinds of stuff that was needed. Drove over to Marin County where this gentleman was. I called him up ahead of time, let him know I was coming over, introduced myself, brought in all these boxes of stuff, and he had in his entire living room all these boxes that were dedicated to this military group that was going through a church, and they would get there within a certain amount of time. So as I was looking in those boxes, I was looking at all the preparations and all of the things that people were putting in them. And I asked them, I said, how can we not be supplying these key items for our own military personnel? So he started giving me a little bit of the background on why they're not getting them. And I said, well, what else can we do? And he said, we just need to continue supplying them with whatever we can. And then, of course, the big part of it is when they get back into society, when they come off deployment, they come off their or get discharged. He goes, that's going to be the next biggest trauma area for them. So fast forward a couple, so we had done that a couple of times. And then we fast forward that we got involved with a pilot program that was for military vets that were coming back, and they needed a sponsor for 8 guys that were EOD guys, military EOD, to go to a equine therapy in Arizona. And they were looking for a sponsor. And Patricia and I sponsored the entire group. So the first conversation was that we could not participate because of, all the things that would go on there. Totally understood. At the 11th hour, somebody had backed out. One of the horse trainers' assistants had backed out. So they said, we have one opening that somebody can participate. And Patricia jumped at it in a nanosecond, so she went down. Well, in the very beginning, from what I understand, and she'll talk a little bit more about this, her experience down there, she would call me at night and just share with me some of the things that they were going through. And as we started thinking about SweetBeau, as we started thinking about having our training center, my affiliation was we need to do something similar. Maybe not the exact same thing, but something similar that not only can we help out these individuals returning, but how can we set them up for success getting back into the civilian world? And what's our little part? If we can help one person or 2 people, 22 or 26 vets kill themselves every single day. If we can, help, one person or 2 people, that puts one more family in a very, satisfactory way. So that was my affiliation to it, but an introduction to it for the Peaceful Warrior, Peaceful Horse. But I think it's important for Patricia to share with you a little bit more about her experience, what she went through, that we're trying, I don't want to say model 100% next to, but we'll take a lot of it, and then of course expanding it out to, athletes and first responders as well.
It's actually where I met Susie.
I was going to say
The Arizona event. Yeah.
That was 5 years ago.
Yeah. And it's right before we started SweetBeau. And I saw miracles there. Seriously. I saw a guy in a circle get very authentic, and the horse that wouldn't let anybody touch him all day walked around behind him and laid down. And I thought maybe a coincidence until the guy next to him reached out and was trying to support him. And he became very authentic and emotional, and his horse walked around and put his head over his shoulder. These horses had never been touched. And the trainers couldn't touch them. And that afternoon, that guy had his arms around that horse's neck. I was freaked out. And I said, Susie, I can't even believe this. And she goes, oh, we train him to do that. Jokingly, as she always does. But she said, yeah, these are the miracles that happen. And I was like, yeah, we got to do this.
And you're doing it.
And we're doing it.
And we're doing it.
Yeah, we are.
Well, then let's maybe just a little bit on then. So as we're doing that, and there's kind of a curriculum, but a lot of it is focused on the round pen and the gentling process. Yeah. So maybe just a couple words on, so for folks who don't know about that, so it's a very different approach to working with horses and training them, and obviously leads a lot of opportunities for humans to learn quite a bit along the way. As we were going, I guess one thing, so I'd like you to explain that. I guess I did, just to kind of tie that up a little bit, when you guys were talking, when Emma asked like what some of the things that you've learned from horses, and Patricia, you talked about vulnerability and kind of owning your own vulnerability in that kind of way and allowing yourself to be vulnerable even with yourself. And then Michael, you talked about patience. On the MVP, we do the Zooms and the huddles, and when the men and women come back, and even the athletes that are on those calls and in the huddles, giving themselves, it's like relearning what it means to be a warrior in a particular way. And I was going to share one story with you. It's just, there was a guy on, and longtime combat vet and all that stuff. Anyway, they were at like Veterans Day kind of parade type deal, right? Well, anyway, unbeknownst to them, they decided to shoot off a bunch of these little cannons, like in an honor, right? Well, there's this huge crowd, and like he's back like a couple months. Okay, anyway, and these guns start going off, and all these veterans are there, and everybody's hitting the ground. They think there's a shooter in the crowd. It's just awful, terribly planned, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, and so he's down, doesn't have his weapon, but he's reaching for his weapons, because that's what he does.
Yeah, brash.
Anyway, in the conversation though, he was guilt-ridden that his old combat self had come out, and it was just such an interesting thing. So what had kept him alive in combat war in zones were these instincts, and that's how he was trained for his whole career. And he gets back to the States, and then he's kind of shamed over those, so there was a lot of affirmation like, look, dude, if there was a shooter, you just saved your family, and that kind of thing. And then kind of trying to retool that. But a lot of the transition lessons we're learning is about, like, how do I take what was and find a way to do that? And a lot of it has to do with vulnerability and being okay to acknowledge here where I'm wounded, and then here's where I got to be, and not being disappointed with the gap, and that cognitive distance that created. And then the patience thing is really difficult too, because in the military, if they order you to go do it, there's no thinking, you just go do it, and that kind of stuff. And so here, why can't I readjust my mindset? Why can't I find a job that's really satisfying? Why can't I sit with my family in, these kind of ways, and developing that patience? And that's where I was going to with the horses, like just accepting this current reality and being okay with it without judgment, and then finding the vulnerability and then finding that patience. And so there's just so many overlapping kind of concepts that the horses really pull in with the veteran kind of healing process. And I don't know that's particularly unique to veterans, but that's kind of what we're focusing on through this gentling kind of process.
Telling that story just made me think of, I was thinking about that guy hitting the deck. He doesn't want to be that guy. I'll bet that's not who he was before he went into the service.
Right.
And I applied it to me saying, when I was a CEO, I had to be a hard ass, and I had to elbow my way. I was there at a time when it was the majority were men. I was the only woman. And so I had to start my own company because I couldn't take it, But the beauty of vulnerability is really going back to who you authentically are. And I said at the event, you can put down that sword. You can put it down and you can walk away, and Emma had said, you achieve so much more through love and gentleness and kindness. And that's the feeling I have, that I was at a point where I thought, I will never experience joy again. Half of my people hate me, half of them just suck up to me, half of them just, argue with me, and then a lot of them get things done. And, it was just hard all the time. I could never be right. And it made me a person that I wasn't. And then I got to be who I was again. And it almost feels like when you're around horses, I don't know about you, but the girls, I've seen it with Jan and you're 13. You're 13 years old playing with your girlfriends, and there's nothing better than being a kid again. It's fabulous. I don't care how old you are, you're 13.
I would just say that's really true. Like, I mean, we've had horses and all that kind of stuff, but my experiences in the round pen and just trying to do the gentling thing without totally screwing it up. And then when, and then the feeling that you get, when the horse kind of affirms that you didn't just screw it, it's not like they don't come over and hug you necessarily, but when they are willing to join up and you get the head rub or the neck rub, and they kind of lean or, they follow you a little bit, you're just, you can feel there's a connection there and you don't even know exactly why. The trainers are kind of working with you, Alberto and Indy and all that, but there really is that kind of teenage, youthful kind of.
Well, think about it for a second from a parenting standpoint. You can either teach by participation or by submission, right? Same thing with horses, right? If I'm going to participate and I want you to participate, I'm going to gentle you to a way that we feel that, that we're both going to enjoy this. I want you to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy this, have a good experience. And then, when I ask you to do something tomorrow, you're interested in doing it again. And the day after, and the day after, and the day after. Now, if I do this through submission, you're gonna fight it. You're gonna run away. You're gonna be on the other side of the round pen, and I'm going to force you into it. Well, what's that going to do? Okay, I'm going to do that for, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it is, but I'm going to resent you every single time. Take that out of the round pen and just keep manifesting that into larger round pen, in the arena, on trails. And at some point in time, that horse's spirit is going to be broken. They're not going to be that connected with you. You were just talking about a connection. You're not going to have that connection. It's going to be a transaction. Okay, I'll take you for a ride, come back, and that's it. And that's not what we're about. We want, it's funny. People have said, SweetBeau, all your horses are sweet. And they are, because we move at their pace, right? And we do it in a gentle participation format. If you notice, when any of our trainers would walk into a turnout with a halter, the horses are walking towards them. They're not walking away from them. And again, horses don't lie. So the horse is saying, yeah, I want to be with you. I want to be around you. I had a good experience the last time. Let's do it again. What am I going to learn today?
Right. I really like that, correctional versus transactional.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a
something that we were saying all weekend was love is a verb. So if you're saying I love you, but every time they do something wrong, you're smacking them or whipping them or punishing them, like, that's not love.
Mm-hmm.
Or making it so transactional. And so showing up every day is love, and asking them. And I loved, Patricia, when we were at the ranch, you were sharing with me like the wildness of the Mustang, right? Because they come to you and people can't touch them. And they're very afraid. And it's not this aggressive nature. It's they've been ripped from their herd, ripped from their land, put in these terrifying situations, and like rounded up in totally awful ways. And they come to you, and they have their own level of PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the interaction between the veterans coming back, or, people who have gone through like really painful experiences in athletics, it's like there's a camaraderie there, and there's a level of respect and healing that, we may think. Actually, in our last podcast episode we did with Operation Surf, Justin Martinez was talking about how when he came back, he was running his home and his kids like his troops, and like he was dictating everything. Like, you have to like fall in line and do this and like operate this way. And like, horses aren't going to do that, and as much as humans don't want to do that, like a horse is big enough to actually like tell you to piss off.
That's right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this whole level of, you have to just love them into being that way.
And Mustangs, I would like to kind of explain Mustangs, because they get a bad rap. People are like, oh my God, you don't want a Mustang. You'll never gentle those horses. You can't change them. And you can't change them to a degree. Mustangs, when they have lived in the wild, they are in a society. They have hierarchy. Their stallions teach the young ones lessons. They kick them out of their band when it's time for them to go out on their own. They go off and they fight another stallion, and the stallion says, if you're not strong enough to take my herd, then you can't take care of them. So I'm going to beat the hell out of you, and you're going to go back out with the bachelors until you can. And the mares, the dominant mares, they are going to take them to food. They're going to make sure they're okay. Domestic horses have none of that. Domestic horses mentally may develop to a toddler. But when you get a Mustang who's been there for a while, they're an adult. And when you're facing a Mustang, to me, I walk in and I think of them as equal. I go, okay, we've got to blend our thoughts here. I want you to know I'm not going to hurt you, and I want you to have joy again. And I'm sorry you've been ripped from your whole family and everything you've ever known by my species. And the beauty of it, in the end, if it works out, and it has with ours because of the way we gentle them, they will bond with you because they bonded with their family. They know what love is. And a domestic horse, they basically have never had that kind of training or development in a society. So Mustangs are not going to forget certain things, true, but they are going to bond with you much stronger than a domestic horse probably can. I won't say ever. It's not true. But they're a different horse. They actually even have a sense of humor.
I think even just a reminder that like we want to love.
Mm-hmm.
Like we want to live in relationship, and we want to have that love. And as isolated as we can be and like do to ourselves sometimes, there's so much healing in loving.
Well, then I guess let's do this, then we'll kind of work toward the wrap up. But I guess the last question on the gentling, I just want to talk about pressure and release a little bit, just because that was kind of a core concept for us. And there's so much, like it's the body lean. You could move a foot, the way you hold your shoulders. There's so much to that. So we don't have to, obviously do that. But so our trainers, excellent. I'll just shout out to Roberto and Indy again. They just were terrific, really coached us up and they were really positive and affirming with us too, even though we didn't have a clue about what we were doing at the time. But one of the things that they said, and I won't get exactly right, but only use as much pressure as you need and never any more than you have to. And so it was so you always want to start at the minimal level that it takes to communicate your request of the horse and then kind of work up from there. But anyway, maybe talk about that concept. And I think if we used one metaphor over and over between our relationship with the horses and then our personal healing journeys and our relationships with other people, was this notion of how much pressure do we use in our own lives, maybe on ourselves sometimes, because, people beat themselves up and they're self-critical and all that kind of stuff, to the way in which we engage other people. So maybe just talk to us a little bit about that concept and kind of the role with horses, but then how's that played out with your experience with people as well?
Well, Emma, you were in the round pen with a horse named Bandero. So we can talk about pressure and release there.
The Kraken?
The Christ, I would say release the Kraken. He is one of the toughest ones we've ever had. He's been in training for 7 months and we have yet to touch him, which is unheard of. And he has come with a tremendous amount of trauma. We don't know where it came from, but we know that we have to deal with what we have, who we have. So when you were in there, you could see that if you literally just barely got into his bubble, and his bubble is where you're a little too close, you need to get out of it. So imagine he's got an energy field around him and you're imposing on that, he's going to react. And he did. But as you noticed, the longer you were in there, the closer you could get to him, because he realized she's not hurting me. She's just looking at me. And when I look at her, she turns away from me and takes all the pressure away. So now I'm feeling more comfortable. And by the end of your session, by the way, I was terrified that you were in there by yourself with him. I was like, what? You didn't even put her in there.
I'm glad I didn't pick up on that because I wasn't nervous.
It all turned out extremely well, though, because when you reached for him, he was coming closer to you. So it's the same thing with people. When somebody is just wired up to the max and they're ready to explode, do you really want to apply more pressure to them? Because they can't trust you. They know that you're not reading them. You don't care how they feel. So they're getting less and less comfortable. And it's the same thing. Bandero, if you apply pressure, he's going to get wildly uncomfortable and could potentially hurt you. Yep. But you didn't do that. And as you release the pressure, when he just even turned to you to look at you, you'd release it. When you put your hand out, he would come towards you. And that is saying that that's positive. To some people, that process looks like watching paint dry because it can take a long time to happen. But that's what you did, and he progressed in that.
Yeah. So it's such a subtle thing. And then I think in our conversations, we did some circle work around it and had a conversation with folks. And just the subtleties that we were being coached up on, again, it was like just how you turn your shoulders, the way you approach, how you hold your hand, even like faking that you're rubbing their head when you're not, just to get them used to the motion, so many little, and then, if we took that level of awareness to the way in which we engage people, it just really, there was a lot of depth there as we were kind of exploring those possibilities about how we open ourselves to that and how we could probably use less force in certain situations and give people a little bit of benefit of the doubt. And I think that's the other thing, the lesson that I took too, and I heard over and over, was we had a recognition and we couldn't hear the full story about how they were traumatized. We kind of know in general, but then when we meet people, sometimes we expect them to be on a certain level all the time. And certainly in our work with veterans and even athletes and the MVP, we know that that's not true. We know that they've got some trauma and they've been dealing with things, and so do other people. And as we're working on kind of taking the stigma out of mental health issues, it really, you don't know what the horse has been through. And then when I'm working with somebody in a whatever situation, maybe just giving them the benefit of the doubt a little bit and realizing it's not personal to me, it's a little bit more personal to them about some of the things they're working through. So
now, I've noticed that we make other people responsible for our relationship and getting along with them sometimes. It's like that person, horses don't. They can read body language, unbelievable. So it's more important to the horse that they know you and what you're feeling. As humans, we don't do that. Right. It's almost like, this is me and what I'm feeling, and if you want to get along with me, you're just going to have to get along with me.
Yeah. And if you don't,
instead of us reading them and trying to do that dance, I
remember Chris saying, when he was in the service, everybody you had ranks, right? So, and, from top to the bottom, and wherever you fell within there, you were either giving orders or taking orders. It wasn't a collaboration. It was either I was told to do this, I do this. And oh, by the way, if I'm telling you to do something, you did it. Right. He said, now come back into the civilian world, right? Now there's collaboration opportunities where he's like, I got to retrain myself not to tell people what to do. I start thinking about, is this the right thing to do? And then how to collaborate with those people to have, oh yeah, they have input as well. It's not just me giving a direction because I was given a direction. Right. So there's that, I don't want to say vulnerability, but that's that, readjustment from a mindset that he's got to, reevaluate on how he communicates with people.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about that. Like, horses never relinquish their power, even though in this gentling process, they still have it. And I think that was a little bit of the message is, what does it mean to have power and how to use it? What does it mean to be strong in a way that's still vulnerable and open to having empathy and compassion for other people? And I think that was really some of those challenges that people were facing, because particularly men, speaking of, we were taught about the John Wayne modality and, hit first and talk later and all that kind of stuff, and certainly no crying ever. And I think we learned a lot more about creative ways to use strength and power that don't necessarily look like that, but still could be super effective for both parties involved. So, okay, honoring your time. If there's any kind of last thoughts, I want you guys to offer that about SweetBeau, but I want to give two things. One, tell us if people are like, wow, this is really cool. These folks, I think they got something here.
When people hear this and they're like, I want to get a Mustang.
Like, wow, I either want a Mustang
support
or I want to support. Tell us, just give us, how can people find you guys, and what can people do to help support the work that you're engaged in?
Wow. So finding us is pretty easy on social media, sweetbeauhorses.org, either on Instagram or Facebook. Okay. New website will be coming out in the next 30 to 60 days, and all of our new website will be coming out in about 30 to 60 days. So we'll have, all of our horses that are in training on there.
And all links to everything that you have, all your social media links will be in the show notes.
That's the best. What we found out is social media is the best way for people to find us, understand what we're doing, our purpose, as well as looking at all the horses, the videos, and the accomplishments we're doing every week. I mean, we've got the videos out there on a weekly basis. We've got photographs out there on a weekly basis of what we're doing. You can track and follow a horse. You can sponsor a horse. There's a lot of people out there that want to know, how can I help? Now, they don't have a ranch. They don't have any horse expertise, but they still have the opportunity to help. I mean, obviously, as a nonprofit, a donation is always helpful. But the other ways that people can help is if they've got an Amazon account, go to Amazon Smile, and then every purchase you make through Amazon, a piece of that can come towards SweetBeau if you select us as one of your charities. If you have planned giving, and at some point in time with your estate, there's opportunities. We've got all of that mapped out on our website. And advocates, be an advocate for a rescue. It doesn't have to be with SweetBeau, but something that's local to your community, or that you want to follow somewhere. And go online. There's so many opportunities and resources out there to help wild Mustangs and help horses.
All right. Patricia, anything else on that?
In 1971, the Wild Horse Protection Act for wild horses and burros was passed, and that was because of Wild Horse Annie, right? Washington had never received more letters ever than when she went on a campaign to do this. So the public cares about the Mustangs. Since then, many, many things have changed, even though that law was never taken away. But we now have to have people start looking at legislative changes about slaughter, about allowing horses to go to other countries for slaughter. There's so many things about roundups, how they handle them, humanely or not humanely. You can write your congressperson. You can do a lot of things just through calling and writing as things come up, and it counts. It really matters.
All right. So be an advocate and an ally.
Yeah.
The advocate and ally, I think most rescues, sanctuaries need volunteers for help. Some of those places could utilize any sort of horse equipment that maybe you have some old horse equipment or some worn horse equipment that's still in good operating condition that you could donate to them. The other thing is sponsoring a horse. People always ask, well, what does sponsor a horse mean? It basically means that I may not have the facility, I may not have the experience to own a horse or a barn to have a horse, but I really want to help somebody with their feed, or help a horse that may need some either medical attention or feed or some special training needs or whatever. There are different sponsorship levels out there around the different rescues that can help sponsor a horse. You learn all about that horse generally. You'll get pictures of that horse, updates on that horse, and that kind of virtually becomes your horse for that given period. Could be 6 months or it could be a year. Our sponsorships are a year, and it kind of gives you that connection with that horse, but also you watch its progress throughout its 6 to 12 months to 18 months, and then hopefully at some point in time through their adoption process. It's a great way to to give back as well.
Well, and I mean, with your Mustangs, people can actually buy one.
Right, they can adopt a Mustang, and we can have sponsorships that are tax deductible because we're nonprofit. But we always say every horse needs a hero. When they come in and they're shut down, it's going to take a while. We keep the horses at least a year, and most trainers say they have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to take a horse from the wild and get the horse trained so somebody, a middle rider, can ride that horse safely. It doesn't happen. And they end up in kill pens when horses are not adjusted well and people get them and feel they're dangerous. They basically send them off to auction. I don't want that to happen to any of our horses. We follow our horses once they leave. We've adopted out 18, and they've stayed out, and people love them. We get feedback constantly. And I don't ever want to find one of them in the kill pen because they were dangerous. These horses are puppies. They're wonderful. People love them.
Some of them even fetch.
Yes, they do.
So, well, then, I'm going to let her wrap up, but I guess, it's just as we're talking, though, in kind of in a way that maybe makes sense to those of us in the world that have experienced it, but like the healing and protection and saving of the horse, it feels like it's connected to the healing and saving of our own species as well. And in a way, it's like to the extent that we can care and have empathy for the situation these horses are going through and make sure they're not suffering, we open up the possibilities for our own relationships and connections and growth and healing. And so it matters not just for the horse, but really for all of us in that kind of way. So,
well, where do you see, what are the next steps for SweetBeau?
I think with SweetBeau, I want to stay focused on simpler things in my life, and Michael does too. We've talked about this a lot. We're going to continue getting horses from the BLM that have been traumatized by helicopters and losing their families. We're going to bring them to the ranch. We're going to give them sanctuary. Our mission number one is to give them joy back in their life. And we're going to make a lot of people happy and change their lives because they can get these horses. But we also want to share the magic of the horses and the healing power of the horses with people who are struggling and need it. And we got to experience that at the last event, and it was amazing to us, amazing. And we're looking for feedback from the people who went because we want to make it perfect. Of course, I have to make everything perfect. And I think that we can carry on with that and see how it goes. But I think every single person who's touched by it and their life improves will become more inspiring to others who need it. I think that's how the world's supposed to work.
It'll just have
Healing
this,
portal.
It'll just have this glow around the whole ranch. And when you cross over the gate, it's just like entering a whole nother world.
That's right. That's right. You stepped into a new universe.
It's really cool. So
Yeah.
Okay, so with all of this, what gives you hope, or what's something that you're hopeful for, or like, you talk a lot about your gratitude practice. So where's the hope for you?
That's a really good question. I have hope in everything. I have faith in a lot of things. I just believe that, and I get disappointed, but I do believe that people are meant to be good and good things will happen. I do believe in the power of manifestation. And I believe that when you're thinking about something good, it can happen if you stay focused on that. So hope to me is something that you can lift. Hope exists, but you have the power to lift it and share it.
What about you, Michael?
Okay. Creative thinking brain, left side, right side over here, operation. Hope is not a strategy. Okay, so that's my first thought. But if I'm looking at it in the future, I'm looking at it to think that we'll expand more on either the MVP or helping people, elaborating on that, but not moving off our mission statement. I think our mission is clearly defined. I think we've seen success in it. We understand it. I think it's refining it, maybe retooling it a little bit tweaks here and there and expanding upon it, but staying true to our mission, staying true to helping the horses and helping helping individuals.
Well, very cool. So we have used our allocated time. So I think both of us, and I just want to say thank you. Really, it has been such a joy and a pleasure just meeting you guys and being around and being at SweetBeau and then having this opportunity and just hearing and learning more about your journey and the journey you're on with these horses and now with the folks who have an opportunity to come out to SweetBeau. So it is really a beautiful thing. And pretty soon, I'll from New Mexico, I'll probably see this orb of glowing light out to the west.
See the portal.
Yeah, we'll see the portal. Maybe we can just transport to that place in some time. But anyway, and I really appreciate too the just like the sound bath and being open to healing is such a mysterious kind of thing. It's so personal to each individual. And your openness to kind of the nuances and ups and downs of that journey and being willing to open up SweetBeau to the possibilities of that and being that tool for people is really a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and your love and passion, both for the horses and for the people. And we are very, very grateful for that opportunity. And Emmy, anything you want to?
Thank you so much. The weekend and the experience was amazing. You opened your home up to us. We literally slept in one of your bedrooms. That was awesome. That was awesome. You let Dane come. And I think I'm so grateful for both of y'all's vision. And I shared this with Patricia, but one of my friends who has studied a lot of shamanism and is like a very close mentor to me, but also works very closely with horses. But we always talk about the wheel of manifestation. And so you have to have the visionary and the ideas and the pictures, and then we connect it to the heart space and the emotion, and then it's the operations and how do we do it, and it's the systems that we put in place. And the wheel doesn't spin unless single thing is put in place. And so to see the way that you two interact with each other and just love each other, like that's a huge part of the healing portal and holding that space and that connection that you two have. So thank you for letting
really
us be a part of it.
Super cool. And
Thank you.
So we did the Operation Surf folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a husband, wife. She's the executive director, and he's a former professional surfer. And he said it a bunch of times. He goes, well, she's the operation and I'm the surf, because it's called Operation Surf. And he's like, I couldn't get anywhere without her, because she does all the spreadsheets and pays the bills and keeps all the, does all the fundraising and that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the surf kind of person with, on the beach, and it's really cool.
She does all the horses. I do all the administrative stuff, operation stuff. So it works really, really well. Well, thank you both for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about SweetBeau and who we are and what we're doing and having us on your podcast.
All right.
And thank you for doing what you do. I mean, you bring a lot of new information and opportunity to people who need it. And I really appreciate what you're doing too.
Finding those hidden pearls.
It's finding hidden pearls.
So there you go.
Love it.
All right. Well, we're manifesting that we get to come see you in your Mustangs again. So
Right.
It'll happen.
all right. Well,
anytime.
thank you so much, guys. And
Thank you.
Cut. All right. Perfect. Action.
thank you so much for listening to that episode, for watching it, however you consumed it. All of the information for SweetBeau will be linked in our show notes. So if you want to get involved at all, there are so many different ways. They also, their new website is about to release, so there's a ton of different resources. But as you heard, just tuning in on social media is a great way to meet the horses, to connect, and, a lot of magic can happen through social media. So we feel that this is a really powerful and special way to use social media for a lot of love and joy. Every single horse is totally different. The same way, if you've ever been around dogs or any other animal or even people, everyone has their own spirit and everyone has their own healing journey. And so I think, one of the big takeaways that I got from this podcast was how standing in your power can mean a lot of different things to all of us, but we do that through love. And we don't do that. It's not sustainable to do it through brute force or to control people or to manipulate or force people into situations. And so much power and grace and healing can come through love. So just an invitation. While I was there, my big realization was when I was working with the horses. Hi, handsome. We got a little puppy on deck. Hi. Okay, thank you. There's a puppy on my lap now. But the big realization that I had when I was working with horses was I put so much pressure on myself all the time to success. I put a lot of pressure on myself, success driven in that way. And a lot of the times I get disconnected from the journey and just the day-to-day, the passion of just being in the work and learning from the medicine. And so being around these horses really taught me how to surrender to the process and to not be so hard on myself and to really appreciate my freedom, because the Mustangs don't have that and it has been taken away from them. And so if you have that freedom, fight for it. Use it, embrace it, and also stand by people and support people or Mustangs or animals who don't have that or who don't have a voice. So if you want to do us an amazing favor, what would be super helpful is if you share and promote this episode. You can share it on your social media. You can tag us in things. Anything helps that way, and we really, really appreciate helping to spread our reach. Another way that you can help us, which is the best, is if you go onto Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can subscribe to our podcast, and also on YouTube. If you subscribe, you can leave comments on there. We're always checking it weekly. But yeah, I just want to say thank you and a reminder that you have so much power in your heart space and that love goes a very, very long way. So we'll see you next time. Go Niners.
Go!